45 years, zero name changes, new offices, more staff, improved technology to better serve you. Education, services, investments. Think real estate, think Marshall Reddick. Brokerage, property management, private lending, creating financial independence through real estate since 1979.
For those of you guys just joining us, welcome so much. We're about to get started here. We have people funneling in. We'll get started here in just a minute. And Lucky's got one more question for me before we get started, for you guys to get to know me a little bit. My name is Cameron Carlson, by the way, and I will be your presenter tonight.
What excites you the most about this industry? What wakes you up every morning with high energy?
Oh man, I just love making friends. If I could say my favorite thing is that I get to meet new people every day. I'm always on the phone, making friends, talking to clients, landlords, other property managers, our staff members, and it's just fun getting to know everybody's stories. And every day is a new challenge. Nothing's the same, and I really, really enjoy that. Yeah, I have to say that's my biggest excitement. Lucky, do you want to go ahead and project the screen so everybody can see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. It looks like the presentation's on the screen now. Let me know in the chat if you guys can see the screen and hear me all right. We tested it here too, but if you guys have any issues, please let us know. Very excited for the topic today. I'll reintroduce myself. My name is Cameron Carlson. I am an advisor and agent here at Marshall Reddick Real Estate, and I'm very excited to talk about the question, how is the market performance for short-term versus long-term rentals? I get this question all the time, so I'm sure a lot of you guys have it. Throughout the presentation, we're going to go over some hot questions that we've also received that I feel is a good questions to answer today, and just some data, and then a little bit about what you guys should expect from a property manager. Now, a little about me. I'm a licensed agent here in California. I work specifically in Orange County and Los Angeles, and I got my bachelor's degree from Vanguard University, hence the cup here. It's my alumni cup from Vanguard. You go there for 4 years and you get an awesome cup as a souvenir, so that's great. Just, my little plug. I own my primary in Orange County, and I'm happily married with a very, very sweet little, just turned 6 months old little peanut. So she's my first kiddo. For those of you parents out there, I'm sure you guys give me some advice, but yeah, we're learning. We're in sleep regression mode, but it's a ton of fun. Love being a dad. I've done real estate transactions in eight different states. Very familiar with sales here, sales out of state, 1031 exchanges. Marshall Reddick is really, really good at those. We do dozens and dozens and dozens a year. And I am an investor in the Marshall Reddick Mortgage Fund. I like to tell you that because I don't just talk about owning and investing in real estate. I do it myself. I'm looking to buy my first investment property out of state too. So that's a little about me. So the other side of what I do is I talk to landlords that just have questions about property management. Maybe you just bought a home and you're looking for a property manager, or maybe you've been self-managing and you want to know, should I hire a property manager? Or maybe you just have a really, really bad property manager and you're like, hey, where do I start? Who do I talk to? I'm the person you would talk to. Let's talk about what real management should look like. So in the last year, I've actually helped 100 landlords find home here at Marshall Reddick. So that's really cool. It's a lot of what I do. And then on the other side, I do sales. So I do sales locally here. I do sales out of state with our out of state teams too. And a little bit about Marshall Reddick. So for some of you, this might be familiar. You guys might know Marshall Reddick. And for others, maybe this is your very, very first time hearing about us. Easiest way I can explain it is Marshall Reddick is essentially a one-stop shop for real estate. That's broken into 4 separate divisions. The first division is we are a full-service brokerage. Whether you're looking to buy and sell your primary and or investment property, that's where we can help service. And I would say 90% of investors buying properties with us also have those properties managed by us. That's where that's where we get to number 2. We are a full service property manager. So we handle everything from rent collection, maintenance, leasing. Basically for you, you just need to sit back and collect a rent check. And then on the flip side, we have private lending. And I like to say private lending can be broken up into 2 different divisions. So one is going to be, we are a private money lender. So if you're looking to borrow private funds, maybe you don't qualify for a conventional loan or you're doing fix and flip, Marshall Reddick actually offers loan programs for you as a borrower. And then on the flip side of that, you can invest in mortgages, invest in a mortgage fund where you join a pool of capital and receive a quarterly distribution. Just like you receive a rent check, you now can receive a mortgage payment. So that's Marshall Reddick in a nutshell. And like I said, I am an investor in the Marshall Reddick Mortgage Fund. I also believe investing in the debt side of real estate. We are spread across the country in several major metropolitans, including here in Orange County, Los Angeles. As I mentioned, we have offices all throughout Texas. We've got New Braunfels, San Antonio, Austin, Dallas, Houston. We are in Tennessee. We have offices in Clarksville, Tennessee, Nashville. We're also in Florida in the Southwest region in Cape Coral. Now let's talk about the topics we're going to go over today. So I did my introduction. Once again, my name is Cameron. For those of you who are just now joining, excited for you to be on tonight. We're going to be talking about 12 major differences between long-term rentals and short-term rentals. Then we're going to dive into a financial breakdown of a real-world situation that we've had, so you guys can kind of take a look at the numbers together as well. And then we're going to look at, hey, what's good quality to have in a property manager? And finally, like, what are next steps? What does Marshall Reddick have to offer as far as services if I want to take the next step in buying or in starting management? So diving in, I want to talk about some differences and really contrast long-term versus short-term here. So I'm going to mention both in all of my examples. When we look at, for starters, if you're buying a home and you're thinking, should I do long or short-term rental? What am I going to do as far as furniture goes? Well, if you have a long-term renter or a long-term rental, just know that the renters are going to bring their own furniture. They're going to bring their own stuff into the home. If you're thinking about a short-term rental, you have to factor in either you're going to purchase the home with furniture already in it, pay the additional cost, or you have to plan out buying that furniture. And on average, that might be $20,000 to $40,000 plus the upkeep of that furniture over time. And for those of you in the more luxury high-end markets, we've got the Scottsdales, we've got the Orange County, Newport Beach. Those are going to be even more expensive. So that's something to factor in. Next is tenants pay all the utilities. Just like tenants bringing their own furniture, in a long-term rental, tenants pay all their utilities. They pay all the utilities and including like internet. So if you have a short-term rental, you're going to be the one absorbing those costs. You got to pay for the TV service, the internet, the Netflix, anything that is going to make your Airbnb special, and there's no way to regulate how much someone's going to use that. If someone leaves the shower on, or if they run the AC really high or the heater really high, it's going to add up over time because you're now having to add that to your to your expenses. And then next is stability. Why is this important? Well, I guess it also depends on risk tolerance. Some people might be okay with some months being greater, some seasons being greater than others. That's more of the short-term strategy. But you know, when you have a long-term rental, you have a fixed lease agreement. It's going to state this is the rental amount for the next 12 months or greater. So there's more stability in the long-term market. And it also comes into play when you're talking to a lender. I'm sure some of you might have run into this, but if you're buying a brand new property and you're talking to a lender about doing short-term rental, they're going to ask you, has it been a rental in the past? Because if it hasn't been a rental for 12 to 24 months and you don't have a track record, you don't know what the rental amount is, they are very weary to agree with you on the value of the rental that might be coming in every month. The reason for that is they're going to do the numbers on what is the debt to income ratio. What is the debt you're going to pay versus the income you're going to bring in on the rental. They might say, we're not going to agree to this loan, we can't do the terms, or you have to bring more cash to the table, or you're going to have to go with a DSCR loan or private money. it might be difficult when you're looking at financing versus in a long-term rental, they're going to take the lease agreement, they're going to take the amount on that lease agreement, and they're going to use that as the amount for the rental income for the debt to income ratio. Just something to consider there. And then something else, like I said, this kind of depends on what your goals are, but just the cost of time. Maybe this is your full-time job, doing short-term rentals, and then it totally makes sense. You're going to be the one taking the phone calls, doing the scheduling. If you're paying a property manager, we'll talk about that later, it's very expensive. But if this is your full-time job, it makes sense. But if this is not your full-time job, there's a lot of time commitment that goes into a short-term rental, and it might be easier to do a long-term rental if the numbers pan out to be the same and your involvement is far, far less. So it's a lot more passive when you're looking at a long-term rental versus a short-term rental. I want to show you guys a graph here. It's interesting. Some years, some months, some seasons, short-term rentals are doing really, really great. Some they're not. And we see here a major collapse a couple years ago in the short-term rental market. And honestly, a lot of that has just been to regulations and rules for long or short-term rentals. And we'll talk about that in the next slide here after this. But yeah, it's just something to factor in that you don't know the volatility of what the regulations are going to be in 3, 4, 5 years from now. So like you have to plan accordingly, but you can't really plan accordingly. And then when it comes to how much foot traffic are you going to get? Well, you can probably consider in a long-term rental, you've got one set of renters, maybe they're there for 3 or 4 years, and on average, they're probably going to have about 20 people come through the home that aren't occupants in the home. Unless you're like me, I've got a big Italian family. Super Bowl Sundays is 20 to 30 people alone, so you can't count those Italian families. But in general, the average renter has about 20 people a year coming in and out of the house, versus a short-term rental, you're going to have significantly more, 300 plus people come through the home, and they've got no idea how to use it. And that kind of brings to the next point is there's a lot more liability. People have no idea how to use the home. I'm sure for those of you who have been to a short-term rental Airbnb, my experience too, you probably see that a lot of switches don't work, or there's a lot of nicks and someone doesn't know how to open something, so they force it and they break it. It's because it's not their home, doesn't matter to them, and they have no idea how to use it. So just account for a lot more maintenance and wear and tear on a property when you're looking at a short-term rental. Next is a factor you probably don't really think about, but what are your neighbors going to think about? Maybe you've lived in the house for 5, 6, 7 years, maybe longer than that, and you're moving out and you're like, hey, I'm going to do this in Airbnb. But you already made friends with all of the neighbors, and now your neighbors are upset with you. They don't like loud noises, they don't like a bunch of people, they don't like all the cars parked out front, they don't like the change and just so much stuff going on all the time. They're doing noise complaints and calling the police, and now you got to deal with your neighbors too. Obviously, you know, if you have a bad tenant, no matter what, that's going to happen, but the chances go up significantly when you have new people coming through every couple days. Something else to think about is there's a lot more accountability in a long-term lease. And that's because you have a security deposit and you have a lease contract signed by both you as the landlord and the renter. And what I mean by that is your security deposit usually is 1 month's rent. So if the rent is $3,000, your security deposit is also $3,000. If they damage the place or if they don't pay rent, you now have $3,000 to pay for those damages. Versus in a short term, maybe you collect a couple $100s in a deposit, maybe you're smart and you have a larger deposit than that, but that's kind of it. And there's no real way to uphold them to any certain terms or rules at the house other than like sending it to them and hope they do it and telling them, you know, we're going to end your time early if you don't. So just to consider, if you are doing short-term rentals, be very detailed, very specific. If you can, I also recommend get a security deposit for anybody. It's a great idea. So a question that I get is, how are new short-term rental regulations and zoning laws impacting short-term rental investors? And it's a big question, and I'm sure some of you guys have seen San Diego, Santa Ana, Orange. We're seeing it Anaheim here in Orange County and in San Diego County. We definitely see the impact, and it really is tough when you buy a house specifically for a short-term rental, and all of a sudden you no longer can do it. For instance, we had a landlord that brought us a multifamily property in Anaheim, in Santa Ana area, and they basically were doing short-term rentals, and the city came and said, you can't do it, it has to be 30-day minimum, and there just wasn't a market for 30-day rentals. Everyone would come to Disneyland, stay for a couple days, a week, and then leave, but now they couldn't do that, and so we had to convert everything, get all the furniture out, turn them into long-term rentals. So I would definitely look at the regulations in your city before making that decision, but something to factor in is you have no idea what it's going to look like in a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now. So it impacts you negatively versus long-term rentals. They're always going to be long-term rentals. They don't have the same rules and regulations, and they're not going to limit the amount that you can have in a certain area. Now, we talked about management fees earlier. If you're doing it yourself and you have the time, then it probably doesn't, affect you as much. But if, like I mentioned, you have a full-time job and you have multiple kids and this isn't something you want to spend all your time, if you're looking at management fees for a long-term rental, one, there's not as much work in general, but they're usually about 7 to 9% depending on where you are. That's going to be your fees. And when you're looking at a short-term rental, they're going to take about 20%. So yeah, your profit looks good, the potential looks good, but 20% of your profit's taken right away just to have someone else manage it to save you the time, and it kind of doesn't make sense. And then there's also more cost for insurance. Insurance is a lot higher when it comes to short-term rentals. You can go ask any insurance provider, hey, if I did short versus long-term rentals, give me the 2 quotes of the policy. They're going to be different. And I mentioned, obviously, it's not here, but the lender qualifications, they're also going to vary too if you don't have a good track record and you're trying to do a short-term rental. And finally, income taxes are higher for active ordinary income on short-term rentals versus passive income on long-term rentals. So the tax benefits also make a difference. I know I said a ton there. Give you guys a quick second. Give myself a second. I think I need a quick sip here too. So another question that we get asked often is, well, what does the rental demand look like for long-term leases in 2025, and how does that impact growth? Like, do people actually want long-term? Are there more people looking for short-term Airbnb? Like, tell me the numbers, tell me the data. And I love data, by the way. And so what I'll do is I will just give you a real-world example. We had a client reach out to us looking to buy investment property. This one was in Newport Beach on Balboa. If you guys know where Balboa is, literally a house away from the actual beachfront. So great, in my mind, opportunity for a short-term rental. So what I did is we underwrote it and we did both the long-term and short-term options to take a look at what would the numbers look like. Now this was specifically a duplex. So we had two units there. One's a 4-bed, 4-bath. One's a 2-bed, 2-bath. And as I mentioned, right next to the beach. So when you're looking at the numbers here, I'm going to break these down for you so you guys can just understand this. Basically, what we realized is you could probably get about $19,000 a month for the 4-bed, 4-bath. It was a large unit that has a 2-car garage, and you probably get about $5,000 for the 2-bed, 2-bath, making the total about $24,000. That's your potential. Now, for them, they didn't have the time to manage it, so in the scenario, they had management fee, and we got quotes, and they were 20% of the rental coming in, which came out to about $4,800 a month. Next, you have to factor in occupancy rate. And I'll show you here, honestly, we just took it from the source, right from Airbnb's website. In Newport Beach, the occupancy rate on average is 51%. It's about half. And what that means is, let's say your rental amount potential is $20,000 a month for easy numbers. Well, you're only going to make $10,000 because half of the time there's going to be someone in the house. Half the time the house is going to be completely empty, not collecting rent. Occupancy rate matters, and we'll talk about what it looks like for long-term here in a second, but basically your now $24,000 is cut in half, so your actual potential is $12,240 also decreases your management fee to $2,400 as well. And then on top of that, you've got the average maintenance. So this is maintenance including like furniture, your restocking, supplies, and that came out, we did a rough estimate of about 15% a month. I don't know if that would have been a little bit too low, but we just wanted to make the numbers as easy as possible. And then next you've got utilities. As I mentioned before, you as the landlord pay for utilities. We were conservative. We basically just said, hey, we're going to call it $300 a month for utilities. Just call that the average that you might pay. And then you have a service fee to the websites that you list on for short term. For instance, Airbnb's service fee is 3% of the actual rent, not the potential, the actual rent collected. So of the $12,240, they're going to take 3%. And when you look at the total projected profits for this property, at the end of the day, it came out to about $7,288 a month, right? That's our short-term rental equation breakdown. And here's the data that we mentioned there. So just wanted you guys to kind of take that in. We're at 7,288. That's what we came to, and we had a lot of comps. And now we take a look at the long-term rental equation. So the rent amounts are much lower. The potential is much lower. Like I mentioned before, some months you might get a lot more than others with short-term rentals, but for long-term, the amount's going to be lower for the potential, but you're going to get that amount every month with a signed lease for a long period of time. So we found that it's going to be about $8,500 for rent for the 4-bed, 4-bath, and about $5,500 for the 2-bed, 2-bath, about $14,000 total. So the 8% management fee is the management fee. That's just a standard management fee. Actually, Marshall Reddick's is lower than that, but that's kind of, I just wanted to be conservative once again, and that's taken off. And then we have the occupancy rate. So if we take a look here at the data based on Collier's data for residential, we find in Orange County the occupancy rate is 96%. So instead of 51%, 96%, meaning that 4% of the time your property is vacant. And the reason for that is a lot of tenants stay 3, 4, 5 years, so you go a long time without having your property vacant. We used 93% to be conservative, so we said, okay, 93% of the time you're collecting rent, right? And that's where we came up with our number. And now we charge a leasing fee. So obviously with your short-term rental, leasing fee is kind of a part of the management. Here it's a separate fee. So you have to account that 50% of whatever the full 1 month's rent is usually a leasing fee. It's industry standard. And let's say that's charged every 3 years. That's where we kind of factor in the cost for leasing fee. Now, when you're not leasing, you're going to have to renew a lease, and there's a fee for renewal. Usually it's about 15% of whatever the monthly lease amount is. So we factor that in every 2 out of 3 years. So 1 of every 3 years you're leasing, and 2 of every 3 years you're renewing. It's going to be one or the other. It's never going to be both. It's never not really going to be one unless you have a very long lease. But for the most part, just being conservative. Now, we also factored in maintenance here. It's less, there's less foot traffic, you don't have any furniture, no restocking fees. So we put 8% average maintenance. And now when we're taking a look at the total projected numbers, that came out to about $10,788. So a couple thousand more when we looked at the equation. And that kind of gave them the idea of what they wanted. And it's funny, we ended up doing both. One ended up being a short-term, one ended up being a long-term. And the reason for that is just the bottom line. The only time it makes sense to do a short-term rental is if you own a vacation home that you visit multiple times a year and you just want to rent it out while you're not in the home to supplement expenses. That was the case. So really from a standpoint of how much money I can make, it's probably going to go in favor of long-term rental. But if you want to live in the house, you want to visit 3, 4, 5 times a year, then it totally makes sense. Supplement the income when you're not in the house to pay for your expenses. That's what I would recommend. That's my bottom line. And my thought here is, if you have to work 5 times as hard for the potential to make 5 times as much money, but have 5 times the amount of expenses, why would you do it? It's not scalable. I mean, you can own 3 to 4 times the amount of short-term rentals with the time commitment as you can with short-term rentals because of the amount of time you have to spend on it. So I personally say if you're looking to buy a property, you don't already own a property that's a short-term rental, and you're looking to buy a new one and say, should I do long or short? To me, it makes sense to do long-term rental based on the data, unless, of course, this is a vacation home and you want to visit it multiple times. So that's kind of that's kind of the bottom line that I've gotten to, and I'm more than happy to talk more if you guys have further questions. Love this topic. So that's kind of where I fall there. Now, that being said, what about next steps? Maybe you're super excited, you're excited for long or excited for short-term rentals, and you want to say, okay, well, where do I start? I want to buy a property. Where should I buy? Well, that's kind of where we have our next step consultation call, where we just want to get to know you. We want to learn, what are your goals? Are you looking for, passive income? Are you looking for long-term growth, long-term wealth? Those make a difference. We want to know, when are you looking to retire, right? Do you have a retirement strategy? Do you want to own X amount of properties before you retire? Do you want your properties to pay for your retirement? How experienced are you in real estate? Is this your very, very first rental property? Do you want to be conservative, get something that's brand new construction, probably not going to have a lot of headache? Or are you okay with maybe something that might need a little rehab? Maybe we can add value to the property. You guys will tell us, right? What's your risk tolerance? How much do you want to put down? Do you want to buy it in cash, right? Can you afford it? What can you afford? What markets do you like? Those are all going to be important criteria for us to go through, and a lot of that's going to determine what property class we fall in. So I like talking about property classes because they really determine the type of investment you own. And I'll break it down to explain it as simple as possible. Let's just say in Orange County, the median home price is $1 million. The property classes are going to be based on the median home price in that area. Let's just say in another market it's $100,000. The median home price would now be $100,000. So what that means is that an A-class property is basically anything between 100% and 130% of the median home price. So anything between $1 million and $1.3 million is an A-class property if the median home price is $1 million. Anything over 1.3 is a luxury class. And then it kind of waterfalls down. Anything between 100% and 80% is B class, and then so on and so forth. And that's going to determine what you receive. For instance, if you have a luxury class property, you're probably going to have a lot more appreciation. I like to think of like A class as appreciation, but you're probably not going to have as much cash flow just because it's going to have a very high mortgage and your rent's not going to cover the mortgage, but you know that you're going to have long-term growth in the property. When you're at C class, you're probably going to have less appreciation, but cash flow is easier. And then I like to think of B class as a little bit of both. And what that really means is it's going to determine also how much maintenance and vacancy you have. So the higher the property class, the usually less maintenance you have. Maybe you have a more experienced tenant that's owned a house before, or they have a little bit higher income. They're probably going to put drain stoppers. They're probably going to take better care of the home. There's going to be less maintenance. They're going to live there for a long time because you got a nice property in a good school district. Where in B and so on C-class property, you're probably going to have more tenant turnovers. People move out more often. They're not going to take as good care of the home, and that also gets to determine what kind of return you can expect. So we have everything in our property rating ebook. You can go to marshallreddick.com/ebook, and it just really dives in. It's almost like a Marshall Reddick dictionary to buying investment properties. So this year is you kind of saying, hey, what can you expect from certain property classes? What kind of tenants can you expect? What kind of maintenance can you expect? It kind of goes over what I mentioned a little bit, but in further depth. And then what are qualities to look for in a property manager, right? We talked about, management long-term versus short-term, but like, what does a good manager have? Well, first, I would just ask, what software do you use? Are you guys on an old dated software? You guys have really easy software where I can just open an app on my phone. I can see all my properties, all my income and expenses. I get monthly reports. I get accounting at the end of the year to send me a 1099 for, tax purposes. It's huge. Where is the maintenance coming in? Can I, run my own reports? Next question is there a conflict of interest on maintenance, right? Some companies might look really attractive on the surface because they say, hey, we have a flat fee or we have a really, really low management fee. but then they have their own in-house maintenance department, and you have no idea how much they're profiting. We find that to be a conflict of interest. At Marshall Reddick, we personally outsource all of our maintenance to our large list of third-party vendors that are all licensed, bond insured, and we get multiple bids. That way there is no conflict of interest. We don't make money on maintenance. Next is, well, what does it matter to you what the cost of the service is? Because there's always going to be someone out there to do it cheaper. But I promise if you find someone to do it cheaper, you're going to get exactly what you pay for. Now, I also don't think you should go with the most expensive, but I think figure out what you value in service, and the cost is going to be associated with that. Almost like, Costco, right? Costco is not the most expensive in the world. They're not the cheapest in the world. But I know when I go to Costco, I'm always getting good value. That's kind of what you should look for in a property manager too. And then responsiveness. Do they have like a response policy? We have a 24-hour response policy. If an owner reach out to us, we have to get back within 24 business hours. That's important. Are they getting back to you in a week? Are they not responding to maintenance requests right at time? Are they not responding to tenants? Your tenants now want to move out, or maintenance has led to further repairs needed. Those are all issues, right? And then honestly, take a look at what people say online. Look up Marshall Reddick Real Estate. Look up us in any market. Look up other companies. See what other landlords have said. See what tenants say about them. See how they respond to those reviews, right? That's online reputation it's a big deal. It's going to tell you what service and what level of service you should expect when working with a company. So this here is a map. I know we showed you, where we're located, all of our offices. This gives you a map of where all of the properties we have. We have about 3,000 properties under management, so we're not talking from no experience. We've been around since '79. We have seen just about everything when it comes to property management, the good, the bad, the ugly. So if you want questions to get answered, or if you just want to know that a company's been around and done it before, I will say we've definitely been around. Anything that you're seeing today, or if you want to learn more, you can go on our website. Just go on marshallreddick.com/learn, and you'll be able to see just a plethora of educational content. Look up, hey, what is 1031 exchange? And you can find a webinar, or you can find articles on it. Or, hey, how do I buy investment property in 2025? We might have a webinar on that. I would just highly recommend, take a look at our website. All of the education's free, really cool. And then for next steps, let's get to know each other. If you guys are local here, love to go out, meet you in person. If not, video call is awesome. Love to share my screen. Just know your goals, learn what you're looking for, and how Marshall Reddick can help just solve anything you guys are looking for. So feel free to reach out to me. Thank you everybody for joining us tonight. It's been a great night. Have a wonderful rest of your night and weekend. Thank you everybody.